Welcome to the Sutherland Report. Thank you so much for joining me. It's always a privilege. What's even more of a privilege is when you are able to bring on a guest who is from the younger end of the age group, but is enthusiastic about politics, is enthusiastic about what's happening in our country, and cares passionately. In the lead up to our election on the 4th of July, I had done about 30 different interviews in regard to reform, and one of those was young Jamie Rippingale. And I am very, very honoured to bring him back on. And basically, we want to find out what Jamie has been up to. So, where has Jamie been? It's not a case of where has Wally been, it's a case of where has Jamie been. Jamie, how are you?
Very well, thank you. I thought you'd call me a worry then.
No, I didn't call you a Wally. I didn't call you Wally. I was going with that wonderful thing of instead of where is Wally, where is Jamie? So, Jamie, lovely to see you.
Thank you.
Opening question. Where have you been? What have you been doing? Because I have seen you coming up all over the place, which is very exciting. So, over to you. Where have you been?
Well, as soon as the election was over, I thought it was time for a holiday. So I decided to go to Berlin in Germany. And it was, I just went, thought go for a holiday. And I reached out to a friend of mine who's part of the Berlin Young AFD. And when I was there, didn't expect much, maybe a meeting. Then all of a sudden, I was invited to the Berlin State Parliament, like where they pass legislation in the city, things like that. And it was amazing. Got to meet several members of it. Dr. Hugh Bonson, who he's from Norwich originally. He's half English, and he's a fantastic character. Like 20 years in German politics, very experienced. And the conversations we had, and it resulted from there. And I know the question was where have I been, so I'll just brief over. I met the deputy leader, Beatrix von Storch, and then come back to England. We had the Reform Party conference, which was very good fun. And then I've recently just come back from a weekend in London at the Battle of Ideas, hosted by Baroness Claire Fox.
Baroness Claire Fox is quite a lady, very, very, very interesting, especially with her commentary. So let's start off with that, with the Battle of Ideas. Where was it? What were the ideas being battled over, and what were some of the conversations that were going on?
Oh well, so it was in Church House, Westminster, which is really nice central location. You've got Parliament in the background, so it's the perfect place to have the conversation about democracy and sort of the futures of debates. There was a whole range. I think there was over 200 talks that took place. And I took an interest in quite a few. So it went from trans rights issues to like Britain isn't working, joblessness, things like that. So I attended a whole heap of talks.
So when people said Britain isn't working, here we are now. Could you give me a couple of sentences on? We had an election on the 4th of July. Let's link that up. What happened on that day? What happened after the election? Where are we now as a country in your youthful eyes?
I think we're as a country we're on the sort of the precipices of history. We're on the edge, not sort of soundbitey bits, but we're sort of a point where we sort of have to put up with the next 4 years till the next election. We sort of have to go through whatever madness, and it has been madness. It's been what 100 and odd days, and we've seen countless headlines banning smoking in pubs. I know he's in pub beer gardens, which is you turned on or is going to. We've not even had the first budget, and that's what we look forward to. In regards to the panel about Britain isn't working, I found it quite patronising partly because they were mentioning, the workplace, what workers should do, wages, but they didn't mention what environments the workplace should have, what industries we should have. We've seen the last of the steel industry in this country. Tata Steel's gone. It's tatared off. It's gone to India, which is because of red tape and climate locally. And because of this, Britain isn't working, and that's a fact. But that's not the case of let's blame laziness. It isn't to do with that. There's no jobs. There's no industry. I would say. I mean, of course, there's jobs, but there's no jobs in traditional industries. I mean, take for example, Reform UK's very own Lee Anderson, who was a coal miner.
Hmm.
You know, a hard day's graft for a fair day's pay. Where's that gone?
I think you are touching on something that is truly, truly fundamental to the crisis that I think our own country is in, without wanting to put words in your mouth. It's very
Yeah.
interesting. You raised the steel industry. So Tata, we see Port Talbot gone,
Mm.
but they then go and build a new steel industry plant in India,
Mm-hmm.
which they're doing and they're undertaking. And this is my opinion. So suddenly we're all offsetting all this green net zero stupidity and guilt, which means that we see the complete deindustrialization of our country.
Mm.
What When you say about patronizing, is that because you felt that part of the conversation was going on with people that didn't understand anything that was going beyond London, or is that a little bit unfair?
No, no. So the panel was from all over the country. You know, we had some from Northern Ireland, some from Scotland,
Right.
but it was a case of, you know, the fact is I've been there because it's like, well, I didn't have a choice of going to college or university. I got an apprenticeship as soon as I left school and went into the
Yeah.
world of work, as I've
Mm,
mentioned previously.
mm.
And I found it
And you
patronising.
and you, sorry, you are in the computer industry, aren't you?
Yes, I work in IT. And
Mm,
there was another debate which mentioned IT. Funny, oh no, that was in the same conversation. And so when I saw like all these experts and professionals talking about, oh, you know, when you go to college and university, but I didn't go to either, and I got a job. You
mm,
know, the wages weren't the best, and that was brought up, apprenticeship wages. But it's a case of I wanted to work. You know, I wasn't fussed about what I got paid. I want to
mm,
be there. I don't want to be sat at home because that's all I can do. And I found it in regards. I asked the question, didn't really get answered, but which was fair enough. There was lots of questions being asked, but it was, you know, I admire these figures. You know, there was some, you know, inspirational talks, but you know, yeah, I felt like we didn't get the answers we truly wanted.
So, I mean, what are your thoughts? Because the most important for us to have an economy that's going to grow, we
Mm,
have got to see jobs provided. Yes,
absolutely.
right.
Well, and this is why Reform UK is so attractive because like a national apprenticeship scheme, you know, bringing people up like a trainee scheme. You know, forget about the Tories' attempt at a national service. You know, what malarkey was that all about? You know, it's attempt of I went through an apprenticeship and I'm very comfortable now. There's lots of people I know who went through apprenticeships and are living the high life. Whereas there's people we know who went to college who are now starting university where, if anything, they haven't because they rely on their parents. That's putting pressure on themselves, you know, and they're doing all these sort of. I suppose it's weaving in the sort of it's written in the traditional stories of England, you know, like oh, my dad went to training college and my dad did this, and you know, but it depends on where you are, and that's quite a London-based scheme, you know. The stereotype is the people in the north are uneducated and work in coal mines, and people in the south, you know, are all highly educated. And I think that stigma needs to change, and I think it has. But it's the fact is, it's still there. And you know, you tend things like Britain isn't working, but we ask why, but we get a million different answers. And I suppose it's as clear as going through every answer. You know, no one person, in my belief, no one person is off work for the same belief as another person. I think everyone's case is different. You can't brand everyone as unemployed and say, "Oh, find a job." You know, it's not that simple. I think there's more complications to it, regardless if it's if it's the conditions of work, if it's the conditions of training, perhaps they mentally can't do it, or you know, maybe there's something holding them back.
When you talked about, you've just said, maybe people up north, maybe they're not going to be as highly educated as the people down south, etc., etc. Well, um, the fact is you and I will turn around and go, we don't agree with that one
Mm.
iota. We then
Oh
have
yeah,
to go through,
completely.
absolutely, we have to go through. I mean, the fact that if young people like yourself are taking apprenticeships on, then good for you. That means that you are highly educated because you've made a very, very, very highly brilliant decision. Because you're then not going to university just for the sake of it, and in a number of people's cases, then getting a load of debt that you think, will we ever pay off, and we need a job and all the rest.
Mm.
Jamie, were it's very interesting because we are, if we talk about steel, and frankly, we need a steel industry. You know, if we're going to start building ships and other stuff for war, then we're not in a situation to
And
be
and
able to
it,
do that.
and I don't even think it's regards to even building for war. It's the home industry. It's, you know,
Mm,
appliances, buying teaspoons, buying knives and forks.
mm,
You know,
mm,
we rely on China,
mm.
and the whole thing is, you know, China's this tap, and we've seen it from the 1950s. They're feeding us stuff. Well, this tap could one day just go like this. We saw it in Russia when we put the embargoes on Russia, how Britain stopped in terms of certain industries. You know, plywood we couldn't buy from Russia, so we had to buy from China. More reliance on China. And regardless of what we think in Ukraine, you know, those embargoes hurt Britain. The fuel, and that's not even regarding the fuel or the gas, you know. So imagine if China decides to have a little conflict with somebody or go into a conflict and we go, let's put embargoes on China. If Britain
Well,
doesn't
I,
have it,
I, I, I agree. And
yeah,
then
it,
I agree with you. So, where, I mean, it sounds like we're going over old ground, but I think this ground is really, really important because of the characters involved and the discussions that gone on. So, and with what you're saying is really important. So, where are we as a country in regard to the whole Brexit thing now, Jamie? Where are we, in your
oh,
opinion?
I'm going to say something controversial, and that is that Brexit wasn't delivered. And I think
No.
everyone in reform and all this will believe me
Mm,
and you know, and agree with me because it's
mm.
true. And you know, this got brought up when I went to Germany. This was brought up by members of the AfD because they're like, well, from our point of view, nothing's changed. You know, and it's true.
Very, very, very interesting. Could
We
you could you just tell me, sorry to interrupt, could you just tell me what the AFD stands for, what those letters stand for?
Alternative for Deutschland,
Right,
alternative for, you know,
right.
alternative for Germany.
Mm,
Basically, it's the Reform UK of Germany. I went there as an individual. I didn't go for the party. I went
mm,
there as a little
mm.
fact finder for myself, just to see if, you know, if they're a serious party or if, well, what I've heard about them is genuine. And you know, completely not the case for the Berlin AfD at least. I mean, they are people who believe that they are leading the charge when it comes to, you know, exposing the, you know, there's a third biggest party in Germany, and they still get called suspected extremist party. Third biggest party. Could you imagine that in the UK if the Lib Dems got called terrorists? You know, regardless if that's your opinion. You know, could you imagine it? I mean, Reform UK, we get branded far right, you get branded all sorts, but there's no case of that. We don't have government investigating us. You know, we don't have anything like that.
I I don't want to forget because I do want to touch on your opinion of the riots and what has happened this summer. I don't think we can. I think it's important that we don't evade that whatsoever,
Oh no.
um,
Well,
at all.
can I just very quickly say? I mean, we all have a voice to raise, and we all
Mm,
can all write to our councillors and our MPs. But when violent conduct is conducted in, you know, in streets, what we all live on, what we've all seen, I think it's wrong regardless of the cause, regardless of the passion. I mean, breaking windows on both sides or whatever it is, you know, I think it's diabolical what happened. You know, the tragedy of Southport did spark something,
mm,
regardless if it was justified anger in people, rioting and lawlessness. It shouldn't happen. The violent rioting and lawlessness, you know. I'm all for doing a protest and raising your voice. By goodness, do it. We have a reason. I mean, I go to Manchester on the weekends and I see one weekend it would be the Israeli protest, the next weekend it would be the Palestine, then the Iranians, and then, you know, and so on and so forth. And so it's I completely agree with that. And I've seen like stop the boat campaigns and things like that happening in areas like Crewe. I've seen that on social media, and I think that's brilliant. That's peaceful. There's no violence, and so maybe it's to do with policing, or this two-tier policing what takes place, and there certainly is two-tier policing. But I think things happen for a reason, and things unfortunately don't always go as we plan. So regardless if their opinion was justified to go out and riot, we saw people loot. And I don't want to sound like Yvette Cooper here, but in my personal belief, we have laws for a reason. If you want to be the party of law and order, or want to believe in it, we have to follow those rules ourselves.
I hear you, and I don't. Just for the record, I don't condone the violence, but
Hmm.
I do understand the frustration, and it's very very interesting when building up to this whole thing of anyone that wants to discuss the immigration issue is then shut down as being far right,
Hmm.
and I think that's a fair comment to say. The interesting situation, people people were putting tweets out. Some of the stuff in there was unacceptable. People have then apologized for that, people like Lucy Collin, for argument's sake. But to then be given a 2.5 year sentence,
Hmm.
I think is wrong. But the other thing I'd like to say that, but the other thing is this whole thing of free speech, and the fact that, Jamie, we've seen prisoners being released
Hmm.
to then put those people in prison
Hmm.
as well, in regard to people like Lucy Connolly, and of course dear Peter Lynch, who committed suicide a few
Hmm.
days ago, sadly. And that raises a case where, in Peter's case, with what I've seen and understood, where he had voted for Brexit and then is protesting and saying, no, I've had enough. The immigration situation with all the boats coming over is deeply, deeply frustrating. Do you see the fact that this government is actually going to solve this? Do you see them actually? We have to discuss these issues. Do
Well,
you see them stopping it?
well, this is going to be a bias for you because I support the Reform Party and I get involved. And the answer is no, they're not.
Hmm.
And if they was going to stop it, they would have done it by now, or at least, said on the thing it's going to stop. They said all throughout the election, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and it's been lie after lie after lie.
And to be fair, the previous government before
Yeah,
that,
well, but previous government before
yeah,
that, yes,
I'm not
yeah,
tackling.
no, yeah. But Boris Johnson won a super majority, well, a super amount of votes in
In
2019
2019, yeah.
because he promised the same things,
Mm,
and he promised to deliver Brexit. Did
mm,
he deliver Brexit? Oh
no.
no, they didn't. You know, and it's like we have these conversations, with regardless, and it's like the count on election night, for example. I was asked by a conservative, "Oh, why are you with Reform? This is, you're just going to wet Labour in." But you've had 14 years to tell us otherwise. You've had 14 years to persuade all the people in Reform UK to stick with the Tories and to convince them not to leave, you know? And it's that same debate now. I think when it comes to immigration and when it comes to this sort of crisis and invasion, what the Reform Party brands it as,
Mm.
is that it's one of the many obstacles that Britain has faced. But like with the Brit spirit, and like with the hardships people in Britain, which I fortunately haven't endured, but we faced in maybe possibly your generation and your parents' generation, we got through it, and we I've said this with people at that event I went to on the weekend. We just got to sit through 4 or 5 years, and let's hope they don't do too much to anger us. And let's hope we can just stand in the election, Reform wins, and not saying that's the answer to all our problems, but we can start getting some common sense politics in the world.
Jamie, do you think we've got nearly 5 years? Because the rate we're going, I see the country being completely broke, busted, and non-existent. I just wonder. That's my
Well,
opinion. I wonder
well,
what your thoughts are.
I mean, everyone said this in 2008 with the financial collapse and Gordon Brown, and Cameron, to be fair, promised we're going to save everything. And did he? Well, austerity and all of this, yes, he did in a way. But here we are now, you know, although, like 10, 12 years later. And it's a case of, explaining that it's complicated because, there was a debate at the Battle of Ideas, which is democracy sort of died? And there were some people going around, has democracy died? And is democracy still a thing? And I think it is. But democracy at the moment is weak and we need to care for it. And I think as well, we need a new definition of democracy, especially in this new day and age. Because,
Go on. I mean, the
No.
key, Jamie, when you say that, I mean, can you remind us of what percentage of people did not vote in the last election?
Oh, crikey, wasn't it upwards of like 50 odd percent?
It was 40. It was 39.9%. It was 40%, right?
Yeah.
Didn't vote,
Mm.
and so they didn't vote. So they felt some of the reasons for that is that they couldn't vote Tories again. They couldn't do that. They didn't want to vote for Labour. They felt there was no one to vote for. So does this present government have a mandate?
That's like telling Bob Peter to pay Paul. If there is a mandate, it's to get people to vote for Reform UK. I mean, we hear it all the time. I think, when I was on the doorstep in the general.
Oh, Flip. Oh,
no.
you're back.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Excuse me for
That's
saying
fine.
Flip, but you're back.
That's fine. The glory survived technology.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
During the general election campaign, we had people on the doorstep saying, "Oh, we won't vote. You'll be the same. You're the same as the Tories and Labour. You'll lie."
Mm.
And that's a fair point because, in truth, those two parties have, but Reform hasn't. And it's about persuading people to just stick with a system, and whether that we change it to the proportional representation vote. And coming on to proportional representation, when I was in Germany during the Brandenburg and Thuringia campaigns, the AfD was saying that actually PR is probably the worst thing for us because in areas we should win, we are getting the vote split, and it's completely true because when they're a small party, PR is the best thing for them because they get their seats, they can attract members, but now they're this big party. PR, they don't need it, and it's a double-edged sword. There was a great conversation with Richard Tice, the deputy leader, where so many people were supporting the first past the post system, whether they were Tory, whether they were Labour or Reform, and it's true because I've gone from supporting, the sort of the system of proportional representation to being slowly drifting towards PR to first past the post, purely from like a logical point of view. Because if you think about it, Reform UK, we split the vote with the Tories, don't we?
Yeah.
And the Green Party and the Workers' Party, arguably, they split the vote with a Muslim vote. And it's the best thing for Reform UK because in areas where the vote's going to be split 5 or 6 ways, all Reform need to do is have a very good campaign and we win. Happy days. Whilst with PR, it would be an overall thing. So it could be that the Green Party get the same amount of seats as we do, And it depends how the proportional system works too, the percentages. Could it be for every 500,000 votes, do we get 10 seats or 5 seats? And it's one of those things which I would like it to happen, but I think it's best to be in Wales and Scotland just as a sort of trial, the new system for the Welsh elections with PR taking place.
I have a lot of questions about PR, but let's just go back because Reform UK got 4 million votes, and how many members of Parliament?
5.
Right. The Liberal Democrats, 3.5 million votes and got 71, isn't it?
Yes.
71.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the big thing that I will have to, this is the only thing I'll take my hat off to the Liberal Democrats, is that they have a ground game in regard to council elections, in regard to local elections, in regard to getting things done locally.
Yeah.
Now, I've been hearing lots of noise, and without sounding too cynical, if Nigel Farage has finally realised that they've got to engage on a council level, good. it's taken long enough. It's something that
Well,
in the days of UKIP is something, in my opinion, should have been really, really. There are a number of UKIP councillors
well,
who then were doing a brilliant job. So go. Sorry, Jamie.
yeah, no. So first, Reform UK's structure was a grassroots level, with the new
Mm,
chair branches, like the branches being set up, and I'm a
mm,
deputy chair for Hindburn, I can
right.
proudly say. And that's to do with the grassroots level campaigning in terms of
Mm,
motivating people. And we've seen it with the Lib Dems. They focused on 75 constituencies, I think,
absolutely.
with all their resources,
Mm,
because they wasn't bothered about winning the election. They was bothered about getting their most amount of seats in their history.
mm.
And in this constituency, they had a paper candidate. In Rossendale and Darwin, they had a paper candidate. They didn't even show up to the count because it's just about getting the overall tally of votes. And we've seen this with other parties. I mean, the Green Party, for example. Yes, they only got 4 seats. Thankfully, only 4 seats. But they put all their resources into those 4 seats. Plaid Cymru's the same. And I think that's where Reform UK sort of fluctuates, because Reform sort of, we focused all over. We finished second in about, was it 90 odd constituencies before
Yes,
you
you
came
did.
in?
Yes, you did.
Yeah,
I did.
not second, and that's bonkers. Just imagine though, if we would have put all our resources and put it into 90 constituencies, 90 seats, happy days. But it was considering it was our first election as a serious political force, and with Farage coming in after that decision of umming and ahhing, I think was a very good played card because it happened at the right time. And if the election would have gone on for a couple more weeks, we would have been up, up, up. But it's the and the Lib Dems gaining that amount of seats with that amount of votes shows the first past the post system is broken, and it does show that. But it also shows Reform should put resources into more areas. Resources that should be available now.
I think the other thing is all credit to the reform candidates in regard to who I spoke to, which was quite a lot
Mm.
across the country of diverse backgrounds as well, because of the geography and the needs of our nation. They, many of them were paying for their own leafleting and all this kind of thing. The commitment was huge with the amount of door knocking that's gone
Mm.
on. So as you say, you become a bit more of a professional machine. Then there is a heck of a lot you can do. So, and the council elections that are going to be coming up, I think next year, next
In
May.
May, yes.
This is going to be quite an interesting test. I understand Nigel Farage has written to the many conservative councillors up
Mm.
and down the country, asking them to think through their position. Maybe they can come over to reform, which is rather interesting. So, Jamie, what was the reform get together that you had, the conference? How did you find that? Was how many young, without sounding patronizing, how many other young people were there? What
Oh,
was the atmosphere? What did you think?
at least a third were under the age of 25, in my opinion.
That is incredible.
I
That's
know.
incredible.
But I went to the Doncaster conference in February of this year. It was my first ever party conference.
Mm,
And that Reform Party conference had, I think, I could count them on my fingers. There wasn't too many young people. And, and it was remarkable in the sense of at this conference. But I don't recognise any of these ones from previous events, and from previous things. And it was
mm,
interesting the amount of people who had just joined the party, they just got involved with Reform. And that's all well and good, but what are their intentions? And that's where I got a little bit higgledy piggledy with some, because it's all well and good saying, you're for a new Britain and you want to help. But when you're saying you're going to be the next prime minister or the next leader of a youth wing, it does hurt in a sense, because, well, there's people who've been here, young people who've been here longer than me. I know people who've been with the party since 21, and they're not ambitious to be prime minister, and they're not having these ideas, and I'm certainly not. I'm surprised enough I'm allowed to talk on programs like yourselves, and that's surreal to me. And so it was a pinch me moment in the sense of, wow, all these people believe in reform, and you could have an open conversation with anyone. You could just go up to someone, say, "What drove you to come to reform?" And it was remarkable, and it was a great party. Great event. We had a great party in the in the evening. Farage gives a bit of karaoke, a bit of singing, and you know that shows you who we are. Because Keir Starmer wouldn't go out on stage in front of thousands of party fans, would he? Keir Starmer wouldn't do so many things. Because we saw how Farage took his glasses off and says, "I paid for these myself." You know, it's the subtle nods like that, and it makes you think, yeah, this is the right party. This was a good choice 8 months ago. To get involved in politics. It's a family.
Well, just to pay you a compliment, number one thing is when people like myself are in a position to then interview young people. That's what is really, really important, because I want to know what's going through their heads, what are they thinking, and also when young people want to engage in the political process. It happens to be one of the delights that I had in regard to doing the amount of interviews before the election on the 4th of July, and particularly with young people and getting their opinion. This is really, it's really, really crucial. I mean, I can give you a lot of political history that's gone on over the last 30, 40 plus years. So could Nigel Farage. We can explain why we believe our country is in the situation it's in, and then what we need to do about it. Jamie, so you're saying a third of the people that were attending the reform conference were under 25. What do you think what did you get out of it? What do you think other young people got out of it by attending?
Well, I thought firstly I was there with a platform called the New Reformer, which and this is relevant. This isn't just a plug, but we are a young platform, for reformers by reformers, and it's a case of we encourage young people to write for us. We have articles published and things like that, and I'm very lucky to be a contributor to it. And that as well, because it was our first conference as a platform. There was so many people's first conference, and it was amazing because it was surreal to a lot of people because, well, here these politicians are standing in front of you. Go at it, go say hi to them, and and it was nice to make introductions to people for people. And I think the one thing what most people got out of it was understanding of the party and what's next. The new party constitution, what was voted
Right,
on, the next
right.
steps. And I think that's what I would say is the biggest takeaway for any person. But for young people specifically, is that the party's in good hands. We've got some great MPs, and they're all going to be fighting for the party.
So I mean, going back to the Battle of Ideas, was it the Battle of Ideas that you then had a conversation with Ben Habib? Was it
Yes.
there?
Yes, it was. Yes, I was very fortunate enough to be able to interview him for a few minutes.
What were your highlights of that conversation? What did you take away from that conversation for you?
Uh, well, how committed he is to Northern Ireland. How devoted he is to maintaining the sort of state of the union as it was.
Mm, mm,
Uh, Very dedicated man, and he's very, very humble in the terms of he doesn't have anger, he doesn't have compassion. He's just a sense of Britain made promises so many years ago regards to Northern Ireland. Anyone who's a British citizen should be for keeping it and should be for having fair trade deals and fair opportunities for people in Northern Ireland. Because just because it's over a body of water doesn't mean they're not British.
Well, it's
And
rather concerning considering this government have just given away the Chagos Islands. What we're going to do? Give away the Falklands and Gibraltar,
oh yes,
and we'll just roll over in regard to Northern Ireland. I
and
mean, I'm not throwing that out just to be provocative,
no,
but
no, no, no,
we
no.
we have to discuss these things.
It's a good point, and I also raised the question with Ben Habib that as an immigrant himself, of course of British heritage, but he moved to England when he was 13. How does he feel about the opportunities for immigrants and people? And he says, well, of course they're going to be higher because of all the DEI, because of all these things what have happened in this country. And it's a sense of, he's earned where he is, nothing was given to him, and he's worked for that. And my interpretation of that is that it's, all these opportunities people have now people like Ben and people before him. We could go back to the 1800s with people like Mary Seacole. You know, they never had opportunities and they had to earn things. And now you see, you know, people would rather hire someone than their colour of their skin rather than their, you know, cut of their character. Like Mr. Rupert Rowe has touched on in regards to council and why councils are going bankrupt because they're spending too much money on silly jobs, you know. And it ties in with that conversation I had with Ben because it was short, but I must say he's a very nice figure, very kind, very compassionate, and you know, despite his unfortunate departure from reform, he's still motivated, and you know, he's still there, and he's a, I think he's the nicest person I've met in politics, and I'm not saying that to arse. I'm not saying that to to sort of, you know, be brown nosing, but I genuinely mean that.
What is the future? What is the future for Ben Habib in regard to reform then, Jamie?
Well, I don't know. It's, you know, he obviously is fixated on Northern Ireland and all these things, and he was deputy, and I hope they bring him back. There's a lot of people who hope, but we never know. And it's not to say that I question the party's direction. Of course not. You know, there's the reason why we're in the party for the cause, not because of individuals. But you know, I hope one day he's back, and I hope he sticks with like this sort of cause of politics. But you know, I don't think he's going anywhere. Yeah.
Well, this is one of the challenges of the party growing up, because of course Nigel Farage is this huge figure, huge personality,
Mm.
and it's also getting beyond that because it's building the foundation. Because frankly, the foundation is the people. You Reform got 4 million votes. That is the basis of the party.
Mm.
And the basis of those voters to me is people that want control of the borders of this country. And they also voted for Brexit. I
Mm.
mean, we have to remind ourselves, I think 17,410,752 people were the majority of over a million did. So where is everyone else? Well, that
Well,
40% that opted out and didn't vote,
well,
sadly.
well,
Um,
you also have to remember though that so many people who voted Brexit were on opposite ends of the political spectrum. You know, we had Claire Fox, who was considered a communist and part of the
mm,
Revolutionary Communist Party, and
oh
all of
yeah,
these things.
yeah.
She voted Brexit. George Galloway voted Brexit. You know, and I'd like to know what Jeremy Corbyn voted because we all know he supported Brexit. You know, and so it's a case of people being scared to vote for and the amount of choice as well. Because it didn't help, there were so many candidates for the Tories, for example, saying so many different things. Well, Reform UK had one message, you know, mainly because we're not a party of public figures and personalities, we're a party of the working man. You know, no one's heard of these people on the national level in terms of, you know, the Mark Butcher or Daniel Matchell or any candidate because we're everyday people. And that's the beauty of Reform UK. We don't have Esther McVeigh's TV personalities. I hope to say we do in one day to say that I can turn on the TV and have someone I agree with and say, hang on, he's come through the same path I've done. Credit to him. Instead of seeing people who've been given everything on the plate for them. And that's what sort of drives so many people for Reform UK in regards to, you know, we must push, we must get our message out there, for better or for worse.
Well, the thing is, in regard to Farage, people that knew him because of being a member of the European Parliament, etc., etc.,
Mm.
then through to UKIP, and then the Brexit Party, and where you can all sit here and go after his decision to stand everyone down, where you know, hindsight's a wonderful thing. Maybe you could say that shouldn't have happened,
Mm.
and then believing that what Boris Johnson promised, yes, okay, we're going to see it through. We now know that with this sort of centrist mentality, and as you were confirmed by the people you met at AFD, nothing has changed. And I
Mm.
suppose this is the moment where I say to people, if you haven't watched Yes Minister lately, then go and dig that old wonderful
But
BBC series out, because for
yes,
someone as old as me, then in early 90s, then all the paperwork starts coming down and telling
Mm.
firms how to behave and what to
Well,
do. And we have to
yeah,
remind us, yeah, I'll just say,
yeah.
remind ourselves that the European Union, 26 unelected commissioners, none of this was ever explained to the British
Mm.
people properly in 1973 or in the referendum in 75. The history is really, really important, hence why people fought to vote to get out, because they began to see that. Jamie, sorry, I do apologize. I
No,
was
no,
just where
no. That's right.
no so AFD, the conference, having a few words with Ben Habib, which is fantastic. And then wondering where Ben could go. There's all that, there's all various changes, as you said, in the professionalization of the party, and starting to have, regional reform sort of committees and all that, and
Mm.
committed to the local constituencies. Jamie, what's your opinion? I mean, you alluded to that at the beginning, but let's talk about the Labour Party's 100 days plus. Um, you know, let's talk about the chaos. How do you think it's gone for the Labour Party? Are you amazed at the amount of U-turns and doublespeak that's gone on?
No, because I knew of the parliamentary track record of Keir Starmer. I knew of the cut of his jib, as you will. You know, the sort of character Starmer is. He's a, he's an imposter masquerading as a working class person. You know, and if you're a working class person, you meet these people every day.
My
And so,
father, my father was a tool maker. The fact that he owned the factory is another issue.
well, I think Keir Starmer was the only tool his dad made, but
Yeah,
I
yeah,
won't go
yeah,
any further.
yeah. We won't go any further than that.
No,
But
and and,
go
and
on. Sorry.
yeah, no, and I think the sleaze and the scandal, whether that's donors, Lord Ali, the payments, and all of this, they're just the same as the Conservatives, you know, and it's just the same as that. And yes, that's a bold conversation, but in terms of political sleaze, you would have thought for the last 3 or 4 years, the Labour Party have been hounding the
Oh
Tories
yeah,
at every
yeah,
single
yeah.
P&Qs on the
Mm,
doorstep to every single person.
mm,
Oh, you don't want this. They're all sleaze. They're all
mm,
scumbags. They're all
mm.
want
Oh,
your money.
absolutely,
All
absolutely.
expenses claims. Within 100 days, though, they do this. You think they
Mm,
would try and disguise it for as long as possible, and brush it under the carpet. But the fact they've come out with it and go, Taylor Swift tickets and stuff like this. Oh, she needed security. I completely understand she needed security, but why send two government ministers then if it's under threat? And
and it looks like that Yvette Cooper was in the royal box. So we're just
yeah,
there's come out. We're just we'll throw that out. I think. Are you saying then? Yes, sleaze on both sides, but it's just the hypocrisy from Starmer and Co.
what
constantly chucking mud.
what I would say is that if you're going on the ballot, on the doorstep, and on the platform, on the TV, saying every single day Labour is the alternative, Labour is going to be better than the Conservative Party, Labour's the party of the working man, to then not back it up, even when you were campaigning, moaning at Boris Johnson in COVID with Lord Harry's flat, moaning at Mike Hancock, moaning at all these people, quite rightly moaning, but then doing it yourself and doing things which were, were seen as despicable and seen as sleaze. Why do that and preach it? That's like me saying to you, I'm wearing a grey t-shirt now. I'm not. I'm wearing a red t-shirt.
Mm.
But that's what they did. You know, and it's pure hypocrisy. And to be honest, it's made me fed up and tired. You don't want to look at the TV because it's just bad news after bad news and disappointment. Not saying I had any hope for the Labour government. God no. I won't be in the Reform Party if I did. But the fact is, our government, regardless if we wanted it or not, was voted for a reason. And they are meant to look after all their citizens. And they're meant to have our best interest at heart as a nation. They don't have my interest at heart. They don't have
No,
anybody's interest at
no,
heart. They don't
no,
have
and
my
not
neighbour's interest at
no,
heart.
and nor mine. And let's just say it, like as true Fabians. Then they want to annoy people so much that they don't vote. The democracy. Oh no, no, you as the lesser beings, we don't really want you voting, we don't want you engaging, which is also, I would say, a Marxist communist thought process as well. Is Starmer is a technocrat. We have to ask ourselves what real job he's done, or does he understand how difficult it is for real people? But he also, a Trotskyist mindset. So this has been in the play for a long time. And I suppose if anyone has said, when Emily Maitlis said to him, Davos or Westminster, and he goes Davos every time. This is not conspiracy can get more things done. It's not conspiracy. It's out there, Jamie. I mean, it has to be said. What are your views on whether we as a nation can actually last the duration of this government? And do you think Starmer will last the 5 years, or do you think that these scandals will eventually find him out?
All I can say is I could predict Andy Burnham to be the next leader of the Labour Party.
Very interesting.
Because whether that's during this time, and I think that's the only saving grace for Labour, is if they get Andy Burnham, the self-titled King of the North. He's not my king. That's the only time I'll ever say that sentence. But in regards to that, I think...
Hasn't Burnham got some of his own scandals going on?
Oh, absolutely. But for the Labour Party, he on a national level, if you don't live in Manchester in those areas, he's seen as this heroic figure.
Right.
And I think with all the sleaze and with everything that's going on, he's a safe option. But when you say about Britain not lasting,
Oh, sorry. Well, yeah.
As a country not lasting, I'm not sure, because I'm a proud Brit, I'm a proud patriot, and I don't think any of us would want to see our country fall any lower. And we can hope. I mean, in May 2025, we've got the chance to elect every county council in the country for Reform UK. That would make a big difference. And then the year after, we've got other local council elections and a few mayor elections. And then a year after, we've got more council elections. And so at a local administrative level, which should matter most to everyone, regardless of what you see in the newsletters and all of this, what concerns you when you step out your doorstep is the potholes and the litter on your streets. Well, if Reform UK was in power, I'm not saying they'd wave a magic wand, but at a local level, they'd make sure it isn't. We've seen James McMurdoch, an elected MP, going out to parks like Wat Tyler Park in Basildon and picking up the rubbish himself because the council wouldn't do it. And so it's that what gives me hope, and I'm not saying, vote Reform UK because it's going to save us all and solve all of our problems. God, no, I'd be lying to you. And I'm not saying Reform UK does set out to solve all our problems. But as a party, it's the only option we have if you're a true Brit, if you're a true patriot, if you care about your country, if you don't want Labour, if you're regretting voting for Labour in the first place, it's the party of choice is what I would say. And it gives me hope to say that.
It's very interesting you said that, because one of the things that has to be hats off to Lee Anderson, especially, when he was involved in the Blackpool South by-election and making a phone call to the local council, going, get these bins sorted out, get this out, get that out. And you're absolutely right, because that's what people want to see sorted. They want all the potholes and all the rest filled in, even if there is the money or the lack of money to actually do that. So if there's a huge lesson to be learnt there, and also good for the Basildon Reform UK there, getting out and saying, no, I'm going to pick up the litter itself. I hear you about, as patriots, we love our country. We don't want to see it go down any further than we can see it already going down. I mean, there was a discussion recently about the amount of unsolved crimes every day, maybe about 6,000, all this kind of thing. So there is a heck of a lot to fix in this country, and having had all the lockdowns, etc., people, it's challenging, and also the cost of living going up, etc., is challenging. So Andy Burnham. That's an interesting thing. Do you think Starmer is just holding the position, ready to hand over to him?
I think there's a great statement I saw by, I forgot who it was, but it was someone on Talk TV who said that Keir Starmer is an interim prime minister. He's a holding stock. He's a stopgap, and I like it not only because it devalues Keir Starmer's position, which makes me very happy, but it also makes you realise that it's possible, because there's all these candidates who have fought for Labour leadership and who have always done this, you know, and there's going to be some interesting votes coming up and all of this, and you know, let's wait till 200 days and let's wait till a year, and then we can start to map out what's going to happen next. Because
Well, I hear you.
yeah, like with Trump's 100 days, you know, it was too short to map out about that administration. So we'll see. I mean, and you know, next in a week or two, we've got the American election coming up, which would be an interesting one. You know, I don't want to give my prediction for the result though.
Well, I have to say, I know what I want. The key, and that is not election interference. I'll just clarify that one. Well, the number one, Jamie, the number one lesson that we could be learning from the Americans in regard to the economy is, you know, we need to lower taxes, low corporation tax, and put far more money in people's pockets. I mean, the fact that we have, you know, we want to. There's going to be an argument over this, but when Ed Miliband is going, well, I want to cancel any future oil drilling contracts and all this kind of thing. I mean, this is utter madness. We need to be self-sufficient in regard to energy, which would be exactly what Donald Trump will be putting forward. Jamie, you and I, we need to have regular conversations. It's always a delight to talk to you and just get your viewpoint on. I mean, some of us, without sounding patronising, we had a Callaghan government after the other centrist of Ted Heath, who took us into the then common market that then became the EU. From 74, and then that Labour government lasted till 1979, and there was, you know, bin bags not collected and green goddesses out because firemen are on strike and all the rest. We need to remember that. Sadly, this chaos can begin to really ensue.
But that's it. But we got through it as a nation. We got through it, and yeah, when I bring up the past, some people are like, yeah, but that's the past. But yes, it was a hard time for some, and yes, you know, there was the 3-day week and all of this. But we got through it as a country, not because of the government and what the government did, but because we as individuals and how the spirit of the nation got through it. Yes, there was some people left the country with their passports and took their yachts or whatever it is and moved. But we don't want people like that in this country. We want people who are proud to be here, of all faiths, of all colours, of all sizes, you know? And I think that's it, because we're not taught that at school, and I can say that. We're not taught to be proud of where we come from in terms of the history in the past. I'm not talking about the Battle of Waterloo and the battle at Rorke's Drift and those famous establishments. I'm talking about how we got through some of the biggest economic challenges of our time, and we got through it. Not everyone got off the same, and yes, some suffered. But yeah, I'm going to say it again, we got through it. And I think that's the optimism I'd like everybody to have.
Yes, we did get through it. We went from Ted Heath through to Callaghan to get to Margaret Thatcher. And I'm not saying that all of that is clear. There's a heck of a lot of murkiness. But our nation then is profoundly different to what it is now. But I hear you. And the big thing is, no, we don't want millionaires, multimillionaires going. We want them to be here. We want investment. The Labour Party not inviting Elon Musk to their big investment summit says quite a lot. And we just can't rely on pharmaceutical companies. We need real jobs. And that begins to open up another can of worms, which I think on another day you and I should discuss.
Yeah, I'd be happy
Jamie,
to.
in the last few minutes, and it's always a pleasure to discuss these things with you. Is there anything else you would like to say? Is there what do you think Reform will be doing over the next few months that lead up to Christmas? Any other comments that you want to say?
Well, we've got the Reform UK regional sort of conferences taking place. We've got the Welsh one on the 8th of November.
Right,
On a local basis, I'm helping co-launch with Terry Waterhouse, the chair of Reform UK Hyndburn, launching
right,
our first branch, or having our first meeting, getting the footwork going, and looking for council candidates. So
right.
it's quite an interesting time at a local level and a national level. In terms of not really many events for us to go to, so I'm going to have a well-earned rest.
Well, I don't blame you at all. And so you've got the regional one in Wales. Is there another regional one going on
Yeah,
at
there's a
all?
couple taking place in, I can't remember the dates, but it's going to be one in the northwest, northeast, all the regions of the UK and Scotland as well.
Right. Well, keep me informed of what's going on, Jamie. I'm going to play us out. We officially say goodbye on the other side as we always do, but can I just thank you for your time and we. There is so much to talk about in regard to history. That's very important. But yes, we need to keep pushing back and be resilient. And I hear you very loudly, Jamie. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Yes.